Today we are going to learn the different parts of the sewing machine. We're going to start first off with this guy here. This is called your foot pedal. The foot pedal is what you use to make the sewing machine go. The foot pedal goes down on the ground, and you will gently, once your machine is plugged in, use the foot pedal to push down. This way the machine starts to work and it makes the machine run. In order to get your foot pedal to your machine, you need to take this piece. This piece plugs into the side of your machine. This is what gives your machine the power it needs to go. Plug it in. And you want to make sure it's nice and tight on there, otherwise it won't work. Okay, then one last step is you need to take and plug your machine in. Now, a couple things about these plugins. You will notice that our plugins are on the floor, and these plugins are sometimes easy to step on. And when that happens, we end up cutting a breaker, and we have to have the janitors come down and fix our machines for us. So please, at all costs, be very careful about stepping on the plugs. Please do not do it. When it comes to pulling out the machine plugs, you're going to unplug this every time you are done sewing for the day. That way, other people walk in and they don't accidentally step on it. When you pull it out, please do not pull by the cord. This ruins the machines, and we have to spend a lot of money to get them fixed. Instead, come way down here and pull by the top of the plug. Okay? Now, back up to the top part of the machine. This right here is the power button. This is what you're going to use to turn your machine on. You will know it turns on by the light. Okay, so right now the machine is on. The machine should be turned off every time you get up from it. So say I was going to get up and walk away, I would need to make sure that I turn my machine off. That way if someone walks by and accidentally hits the foot pedal down here, your machine isn't going to start going. Alright, on the side here, we have two different knobs. This knob controls your stitches right here. See, it says pattern. Right now it's on the traditional straight stitch that we like to use. If I take and turn this knob, it changes the stitch pattern. You have to be very careful with this because not all of these stitch patterns work on our machines. So we typically like to keep it at a number 2, which is just a straight stitch. Looks very much like our running stitch that we did. The other knob on the side here is called the hand wheel. Okay, this is your stitch adjuster. This top one is your hand wheel. The hand wheel is what you can use to make your needle go up and down. Okay, the hand wheel controls that. The same thing that controls that is your foot pedal. You need to make sure that when you're using the hand wheel, you are always turning it towards you. If you turn it away from you like this, you're going to cause your machine to become unthreaded. So you always want to make sure that you turn it toward you. Alright, now let's go up top here on the machine. You're going to notice that there's quite a few contraptions. This first piece here is for the bobbin. Okay, this is a bobbin. You need a bobbin in order to make your sewing machine work. We'll get to this, where this goes, in just a couple minutes, but this is used to put the thread onto our bobbin. And so this piece moves back and forth, and you'll see how this works in a later video. This here is called the spool pin. Funny how I have a spool of thread. Okay, this is where your thread goes when you are sewing. Typically, if you try to sew without anything on the end here, your thread is just going to fly off. So you have what is called a thread holder or a spool pin holder, and you just set that on next to your spool of thread so that when you pull on the thread, your spool won't come off. Now, these two dials right here, these are the stitch length adjuster and the stitch width adjuster. Now, typically we aren't going to touch these. If you touch these, you could mess up your machine unless you know how to get them back to the way you want them. So typically, please don't touch these unless you want Miss Morgan to be upset with you. Okay, as we move down here, this is another one that's going to adjust your stitches. Probably don't want to touch it again if we don't want to touch these two. Okay, so just leave these ones alone until you get special directions. This one is oftentimes used for a zigzag stitch, but we don't use that as much as our straight stitch. Up here is the part of the machine where you start to thread your machine. Okay, I'll show you how to thread the machines later, but this is the piece that is very important for threading your bobbin. And these pieces here are going to be very important for your thread. If you'll notice, I'm turning my hand wheel. This little knob pops out here, and then it goes away. This right here is called the take-up lever, and the take-up lever controls your thread in your machine. If you go toward the back here, you're going to notice a switch, and this switch controls up front here. Here is the needle on our machine. Okay. This little piece here is used to thread the machine, so we'll get to that later. This is called your presser foot. Okay, don't get it confused with your foot pedal. The foot pedal sits on the floor. Your presser foot is going to be what holds your fabric down when you're sewing. If you aren't careful and you forget to put your presser foot down, you're going to have a mess of thread. So this is going to be very important to know, your presser foot. And it is controlled by this lever back here. This is your presser foot lever. It controls when it goes up and down. Don't get it confused with this one. This one is not going to do that for you, but this back one will. Underneath your presser foot, you might notice that there are some metal pieces with kind of like teeth-looking things on them. It's as crazy as it sounds. These are called the feed dogs. And the feed dogs help to pull your fabric through, which I will show you in just a second. But these little guys are going to help so that you don't even have to push your fabric through the machine. These little things do it all on their own. This clear compartment up front here is called the bobbin holder. You can take this bobbin holder and pull on it to open it up. So this is the bobbin case door. And then in here is where your bobbin will go. Remember what the bobbin looked like? That was this little piece here. So later when I show you how to thread this, this piece is just going to go right in here. So it's the bobbin holder. Okay? Another thing that you're going to have to know about your machine, if we take a look back at it, is this guy right here. See how it's got a U-turn button on it? This is your reverse stitch lever. So if I pull this down, instead of my stitches going forward, they're going to come backward, which is going to be very important for us to know later. Down here, I know people are going to ask me about it, but I'm just going to tell you right now. This is just a little compartment. Okay, so it's actually used for people who sew with their machines a lot to store things in there. But this little guy is mostly just for us to make it easier to sew. So those are all of the parts of the sewing machine. Just remember, the needles are sharp, and to be careful with the plugins. If you aren't careful with the plugins, we can actually be electrocuted, which is very bad. Also, the needles. Yes, I know people who have sewn their fingers. You need to be careful and pay careful attention to safety instructions.